and I see, and everyone knows, so many women not experiencing orgasm, complaining that their sex lives are dead or boring, have no libido, have lost their libido. Like, what is going on when we are designed for pleasure? And it's very obvious to see that when we're connected to the aspects of our being, we're shining as our best selves. We're living to our highest and greatest potential. And you know, this isn't just something that is frivolous or superficial or, you know, a nice to have aspect. It's fundamental to our well-being. It's fundamental to our health, mental health, emotional health. It's even part of our capacity to self-heal. And it's also fundamental to our spirituality. For women, the sensual, the pleasurable, the sexual are a fundamental part of her spiritual awakening, growth, expansion, and self-empowerment. So that's not the reality that many women are experiencing. So what the heck is going on? Well, I've spoken about this a little bit in some of my lives that I've already done so far. You know, there's a lack of knowledge, there's a lack of education, there's this whole patriarchal and religious indoctrination and programming of sin and shame, which disconnects women from their bodies, their pleasure, their power, their sensuality, right? And there's this whole conditioning to be the good girl, this fear of speaking up, this inability because of all of these conditionings to voice desire or even to know or understand what our desires truly are, which is why yesterday's live was called Know Thyself, Knowledge is Power. We have to educate and inform ourselves, unfortunately, because nobody is doing that job, and without that knowledge and education, we are not empowered. But women and men who love women, women are designed for pleasure. And contrary to the way I see lots of people behaving and acting in this realm, I want women to understand, and I want men to understand, that your pleasure and that your sexuality, like, I want to stress how fundamentally important it is to your whole sense of self and well-being and empowerment and spirituality, but also that it encompasses every part of you. So it's not, your pleasure potential and your sexuality are not reduced to a few points on your body, which, you know, we all know the obvious points, probably 3 places that people's minds are going to go to, you know, your chest and your vulva, right? That is just the most reduced, fetishized way of looking at your pleasure in your body. Like I said at the beginning, everything you've been taught is a lie. The true reality of your potential, women, is turned on its head. So men watching this, I want you to understand that for a woman, her whole body is an erogenous zone, her whole body. And actually not just her whole body, her whole being, her whole energy field, her whole sphere of life, mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, is an erogenous zone. So I want you to understand that a woman can orgasm just from the way you look at her, just from the way you breathe with her, just from the way you speak to her. You don't even have to touch any body parts. When she's awake sexually and resensitized, because a lot of women are very shut down and numbed off from their bodies and from their energy bodies, but when that part of her is resensitized and reawakened, her whole field is an erogenous zone, not just those very obvious parts that you might be drawn to, right? And then if you come into the physical sphere, touch anywhere can be highly erotic, highly arousing, potentially orgasmic. It does not have to focus on the very obvious places that everybody's mind goes to, right? So we want to expand. I invite you to expand your concept of what is erogenous and what is erotic. And this comes back to what I said the other day in terms of like men are bringing themselves to women rather than supporting a woman to discover herself, and vice versa. So, you know, if you're coming to a woman looking to grab or touch or get hold of the places that turn you on, you're probably not going to be arousing her, although there may be some overlap, right? There may be some overlap, but what is going to be arousing and erotic for her is your recognition that all of her is an erogenous zone. And women, if you're not aware of this, this is part of what I teach in my Rapture and Awakening Shakti courses. Okay, so a lot of women have shut down to this potential for all the reasons that I've already mentioned. And I just invite you to kind of open your mind to the reality. It's not, you know, it's not a lie, it's not an illusion, not a fantasy, that all of you is an erogenous zone. And that's why this idea of foreplay, which I said yesterday is a word I don't like because it makes it sound like it's optional, where I'd rather call it non-penetrative lovemaking. Everything that happens before penetration is just as important and potentially more important and just as arousing and stimulating as what happens after penetration, right? You're designed for pleasure. You have an organ called the clitoris, which most people don't fully understand, or, you know, they think it's just this little button, but actually it's this massive organ with two legs that go down either side of the vulva and then all the way up inside the vagina. It's a huge organ. This has thousands and thousands of nerve endings, and its only purpose is to give you pleasure, right? You're designed for pleasure. So, I want to just kind of, you know, share with the guys who might be watching this. Women are multi-orgasmic by nature. We're designed for pleasure by nature. We are capable of having waves and waves and waves and waves of orgasmic experience that can go on for hours, you know, for a very long time. And typically for a woman, the more she deepens into that experience of opening to you and surrendering to those orgasmic waves, the deeper she goes, the more she opens, the more she surrenders, the deeper and more profound the experience can be, if obviously if you are able to meet her in that and not just mechanically engaging in some kind of repetitive behavior that is disconnected from your heart and your consciousness. That's important to add. But that's the potential for every woman. And so if you're a man who is making love in the kind of more immature, very conditioned way, which is to rush to touch the places that turn you on, to rush to penetrate and get to orgasm as quickly as possible, that's going to be the least satisfying way of making love for most women most of the time. So, you know, until there's an education and an information, there's a huge mismatch. And this is one of the key reasons that a lot of women are not satisfied and not experiencing the pleasure and the ecstasy that they are designed to experience. So let me just kind of take you through a little bit of a sharing. So to kind of illustrate this for you. So as a teenager myself, I probably discovered, had my first orgasm when I was, probably 12, 13 through self-pleasuring, and then discovered my father's porn and would often read that as well. Then there was no sex education at school. I went to church and there was the belief that sex is wrong and sinful. My parents told me that sex before marriage was wrong and bad. So there was this whole kind of splitting off and this sense of secrecy and shame around self-pleasuring and around my body and my sexuality. There was no empowerment or support to really understand what was going on. And I think this is very common still, unfortunately, for most people, for most women and for most men too. So then my early sexual experiences were with teenage boys who were very inexperienced and very clumsy, and quite frankly, I didn't experience any pleasure whatsoever from the way that they touched me. And I was too shy and too ashamed and too scared to say anything about it, because I was so conditioned as a young girl at that time to endure, to tolerate, to be good, and not to voice or speak, most especially not to voice or speak about my pleasure and my desire. It just wouldn't have occurred to me. And unfortunately, like I said, this is still very common for a lot of girls and women today. So there you have the problem, because a lot of girls and women are tolerating touch that they don't like. I hear this from my clients as well, too scared or shy to say anything about it. I got married, and the lovemaking in that marriage bored me to tears very, very quickly. I didn't know what to do about it, but I did say to my partner, like, this isn't working for me. Can we do something about it, please? He said no. So I took things into my own hands and ended up with a lover. And this lover was educated, he was informed, he'd read a book called The Joy of Sex, so he understood women's arousal and anatomy, he understood foreplay, he understood all the many different positions that you can make love in. And that was the very first time that I discovered that I was multi-orgasmic. And this is just, we're still talking about conventional sex right now, you know, but just that discovery blew my mind. It blew my mind that I could experienced such immense pleasure and so many waves of orgasmicness that just kept going on and on and on and on and on. It wasn't like once and done, it could just keep going, right? And so then the capacity of my partner to meet me there was fundamental in terms of ejaculatory control and mastery. And fortunately, he had that. And from then on, for me, most of my partners have had that to varying degrees. So that was my norm. I never had the experience that I hear many women talking about, where they have partners who basically rush to penetration, rush to orgasm, and then it's all over within 10, 15 or 20 minutes. That's just not been my experience. And I shudder to think, I just can't even contemplate something as terrible as that, because that just is so the opposite of what I know that women are designed for and what we're capable of. It's just, it makes my heart actually ache to think that so many women are having so little pleasure and so little experience of what they're actually capable of. So I just want to kind of continue with the story, because I think it highlights things that are really important and useful. And I have no shame or embarrassment about talking about my personal story. It's in my book. So, you know, then I was married again, and then I became a mum. And, you know, again, contrary to particular myths that might be out there, for me, being all the way through pregnancy, I had no loss of libido, no loss of desire, maybe even more desire. It was beautiful as my body changed. But then, as I mentioned in yesterday's video, I experienced a trauma in my vagina during birth. And you have to understand, men, that for a woman, when she opens to lovemaking with you, it's a whole body, whole energy field opening. And that opening is so delicate and very dependent upon how you approach. If you come barging in with this, it's for most people, for most women, that is a huge turnoff. It feels invasive, it feels too soon, it feels insensitive. If you don't come with that agenda, first of all, if you just seeking to be present to what is actually alive in the moment and sensitive to where your partner is, she will begin to soften and open to you, right? And become more receptive. But you can't go in with this agenda to get your socks off, rocks off. I don't know what the phrase is. It's just not going to work. And having this understanding that performing things that are not sexual are part of foreplay. So, for example, I know everyone is unique, but just to give you examples, for me, if you express appreciation for me in some area of my life, my work, my mothering, my cooking, my art, my writing, I will soften to you. If you buy me a bunch of flowers, I will soften to you. If you take the rubbish bin out without me asking you to, I will soften to you. If you offer to massage my shoulders because you know I've had a long day, I will soften to you. And when I soften to you, then it's possible that we may go on to make love, but you can never do those things with that as your strategy, because I'll know, right? You know, so it has to be sincere and come from the heart. But all of those things for me count as foreplay, right? So yeah, post-birth trauma, no sex for 4.5 years. And then I came back to the UK and met a tantric man. And my life pivoted and my sexuality pivoted from that moment forth. So he understood tantric techniques. He was a meditator, a follower of Osho. And the very first time that we made love, it was a revelation, no pain at all. What was the difference? Slow approach, like I said yesterday, from the outside in, not rushing to get anywhere, not rushing to penetrate, taking great care to adore and caress my whole body, every single part, right? No rushing to get to the obvious places. Communicating, talking, listening, breathing together, waiting, continually asking for feedback, asking for permission to enter, asking if I was ready, right? A very different approach. No pain, multi-orgasmicness, a complete revelation. So that's when things stepped up from what I would call conventional sex, which had been brilliant, to my then pivoting and shifting into the world of Tantra, where everything expanded 1,000-fold and continues to, might I add. So then in the discovery of Tantra, for me, there was the revelation that I'm capable of being energetically orgasmic without any touch at all and without any man or other being in the room with me. So I can be orgasmic through the way that I breathe, through the way that I dance, through the way that I move my body, through touch on or off the body or above the body, through visualization, through all kinds of other tantric meditation practices. And there doesn't even need to be anyone around me. I can be on my own, or I can be with someone and share these practices, but I don't need someone to be here. And with this, there was also the discovery for me that this ecstasy is infinite. There's no limit. There's no limit to the pleasure. There's no limit to the bliss. There's no limit to the ecstasy. It just keeps on expanding. That's when I also understood how fundamental this ecstatic current of life force energy, which we call Shakti or Kundalini, is for me as a woman and for all women, to our self-realization, to our empowerment, to our full self-expression as sovereign women in the world. Without this connection to our sacred sexuality, we cannot be that. And that's when I began to teach what I discovered and continue to discover, because that revelation revealed to me what had been hidden, what all that conditioning of the patriarchy and the religion and the parents and the peers and the school system, you know, all the ways that my system and my energy field and my pleasure had been shut down, demonized, weaponized against me, shamed, the way there'd been this shame about bleeding, you know, about all the body parts, and this split between the virgin and the whore. And I saw it for the construct that it is, that is designed to separate a woman from who and what she really is, designed to separate a woman from her pleasure, from her power, from her wisdom, right? And from her full spiritual awakening. I want to bring my story all the way up to the present day. I'm 57 now, I'll be 58 this year. Things haven't stopped, ladies and gents. They don't need to stop, right? I'm still very juicy, very alive, very vital, very multi-orgasmic. And as far as I'm concerned, this is going to keep on expanding. I don't see why it needs to stop. right? I'm still learning new practices. I still do my practices every day. And I can't imagine life without this because it's a part of me. And I'm excited about sharing where I am now and who I am now with my next partner. I don't have a partner right now, so I'm self-fulfilling and self-pleasuring. But when I do enter into relationship, then I expect to be able to share this juiciness and this deliciousness and this ecstatic energy with a beloved who understands these things too. So again, I just want to, I think this is an important point to add, because I do get a lot of messages from men who seem to misunderstand that when a woman such as me speaks openly about these things, that it somehow means that we're available, or that we are polyamorous or polygamous or into being casually sexual with other people. Not at all. Not at all. No. It's just that I have no shame about talking about these things. It's my passion to educate and inform men and women about these things, because for me, when we all truly embody and understand this, we are standing in our power and sovereignty as whole beings, as integrated beings, and we are part of the change and the ascension on the planet, bringing more love. This is ultimately about love, making love, right? We're making love. So it's about bringing more love, more bliss, more ecstasy, more empowerment, more sovereign individuals into being on this earth. This is what this path is about. So if you're a man watching this and you're with a partner who is not experiencing pleasure with you, for example, I was thinking about this before doing this live, and I was thinking, wow, if you'd have seen me when I was a teenager with those boys that I was making out with, you probably would have thought I was frigid, to be honest with you, because I didn't make any sounds, I didn't move my body, I was kind of frozen. You could have probably thought that. And, nothing could have been further from the truth. It's just that I felt so uncomfortable and so shy and so ashamed and so conditioned to receive as a passive girl, basically. That was the conditioning at the time, to be a passive recipient. So men, if your partner is not responding, if she doesn't seem to be enjoying herself, then there's a conversation to be had. There's education that you can get. Like I said yesterday, there's so many books, there's so many courses. There's inquiry, like finding out what works for you, what doesn't work for you. How do you like this pressure? How do you like this touch? What would you like? Have a conversation about it, discover something new. Discover something new and more, because I can assure you that every single woman is designed for infinite pleasure. And when she has embodied that and does embody that, she's the best woman that she could ever be. Like, what man doesn't want that? What man doesn't want a woman who adores him? Like, if you are able to gift your woman and support her in expanding into her pleasure, she's going to love you. She's going to want to shower gratitude and juiciness upon you. Like, what man wouldn't want that, right? So education and information is needed. Practice is needed. I've been doing this work for almost 20 years, and there's all kinds of practices involved in it. And at first they might seem strange. At first you might wonder what you're doing. At first they might seem unnatural. It's kind of a case of having to unlearn some bad habits, but also to learn new habits that might be challenging at first, like ejaculatory control. Men, I want you to know that you can match and meet your woman in her way of being multi-orgasmic and opening to infinite pleasure. You can meet her there. In your presence, in your ejaculatory control, in your loving, presencing her, and in your self-awareness, and in your integration and circulation of your own Shakti energy, right? It takes practice. Yes, it takes practice. It might be challenging at first. Great, learn something new. This energy is healing. This energy is connecting. This energy is love. It's fulfilling. It's expansive. It's awakening. It's a gift. The other things that I haven't mentioned, but I will mention a little bit today, and then there'll be more in other lives about this, that can block pleasure for women, right? Because I've mentioned some of them, but there can be beliefs, there can be conditioning, there can be traumas, there can be wounds, all of which, you know, again, part of the patriarchal system encourages people to split their thinking off and think the mind and the body are separate. They're not. They're totally connected. So beliefs, wounds, traumas, conditionings are coded into the body, and they will be expressed through the body as a lack of sensitivity or a numbness, discomfort, pain in particular areas, including inside the vagina or around the vulva or other body areas. So numbness, deadness, lack of response, lack of sensitivity, pain, discomfort. Hypersensitivity can be another reaction to previous wounds, traumas, and conditionings. And any kind of beliefs, like the beliefs, this is wrong, this is dirty, this is naughty, you're a slut. You know, those words that were said to them when they were younger, coded in the body, will create what's called body armoring. So that is another reason why your partner may not be responsive. And that requires your love, your compassion, your tenderness, and your presence. Because all of those woundings, traumas, conditionings, beliefs, yes, there's a lot of inner work that we can do as women. And that's what I do with women. We do this inner work to heal, to transmute, to open, to de-armor. But you can support that process by your compassion, your love, and your presencing. Simply placing a loving hand on a heart or on over the belly, for example, and just breathing with your partner can support healing. And as she heals and softens, then her body will resensitize. Her energy system will begin to flow, and what is possible begins to open up. Of course, it's always a two-way street, always. It's never, you know, about one person, but this is how you can help. Let me just see if I've forgotten anything from my notes. No, I don't think I have. Yeah, there's one sentence that I wrote down that is for women watching this, because I know a lot of women are watching this as well, and thank you for that. If you're not experiencing pleasure, or the kind of pleasure that you would like to experience, you're not broken. You're not a man. Basically, part of this flipped narrative is that women expect of themselves what men have been conditioned to expect of them, rather than understanding how different we are and how different our arousal pathways are. So if you haven't been experiencing the kind of ecstasy, bliss and pleasure I'm talking about, or the kind of multi-orgasmic pleasure I'm talking about, you're not broken. There's nothing to be fixed. There's just been a lack of understanding and awareness that can shift things. And you're not broken. You're just not a man. You're a woman. And women operate very, very differently. We live in a society and a culture that has not understood this and that has not made that clear to us. So we've been going around tolerating touch and approaches and lovemaking that is not satisfying because we didn't know better. But now we do. You know, and that's part of my life's mission, is to support women to rediscover what the school didn't tell us, what the church didn't tell us, what the parents didn't tell us, what the sex ed didn't tell us, what the movies don't tell us, what porn doesn't tell us. And we reclaim this beautiful, beautiful juiciness, which is the source of our power and our sovereignty and our radiance and our vitality. Like I said in one of my blogs yesterday, the day before, imagine a world in which every woman is literally humming and vibrating with her orgasmicness within her own body, just humming with that. Imagine how different the world would be. You don't need a man for that. I haven't got a partner. I feel it much of the time. Imagine a world where every woman is experiencing this, embodying this. Just imagine how beautiful it would be. And understand that it's not then about having to act on that feeling of desire or juiciness to get with someone or to have it off, right? We can experience this beautiful, juicy orgasmicness within ourselves as a contained experience of our natural ecstatic state. That is our natural state. The inner unification of Shiva and Shakti, masculine and feminine, is our natural state. As Margot Anand, a very famous, wise Tantra teacher from the West, says in one of her books, we live in an anti-ecstatic society. There is so much conditioning to reverse and deny our true state. But women and men, I want us to live in a world where we're all embodying our highest and greatest potential. And it takes this remembering that we are designed for pleasure. Great, that's the end of my sharing for today. I hope you enjoyed that. If you've got any questions, pop them below. And I always forget to do these things, but yeah, I just want to share then that if this calls you to work with me, here's how you can work with me. You can work with me one-on-one. You can take my Rapture immersive course, and I'm launching a live version of that, as in an in-person version of that, in May. It's available for self-study right now. You can join my Rapture monthly study group for women. Next group is 27th of April, and you can join my monthly mixed Tantric Temple, which is, next one is Wednesday, April the 20th. And both of those groups, the mixed Tantric Temple, the Rapture study group, are on a Wednesday night once a month, and online on Zoom, so that they're available to people from around the world. It's beautiful. We've had people from the States, we've had people from South America, we've had people from other places join us so far, and it's very, very beautiful. So I'll put the link for that below, but please reach out if you have any questions. Stay juicy, stay well, take care, and I'll see you tomorrow. Lots of love.